So one of the tools that Adobe has added into this October 2020 release of Photoshop is a tool called Sky Replacement. And to get to Sky Replacement, you go to the Edit menu, and it's just over halfway down here. Now, an image like this, if you imagine previously, you'd have had to go in there and to replace the sky, you'd have had to do a selection of everything else. You'd have probably, in all honesty, gone in there and used tools like color range to select the sky and the clouds, and you would then have inverted the selection or something like that. You may have done it off the back of color channels, for example, and done a selection that way. And sometimes it's an easy process. Sometimes with images like this, it could have taken a bit longer because there's all the clouds peeking through the trees there. It would have taken a little while to get them all. With the new tool, it makes it into literally a 2 or 3 click process. So we'll go over to the Edit menu and we'll go down and click on Sky Replacement here. And this brings up the Sky Replacement Dialog box. And when you have this dialog box, there's a bunch of settings in there. Now, by default, it will use whatever the last sky is that you used. And I've been having a play about with these. I've had to go on some of the sunsets, as you can see there. This tool's only been out now for about 24 hours. It only came out yesterday, and I downloaded the update last night. So it's a very, very new tool. And at the moment, when you go into there, there are 3 sets of skies in there. There are blue skies, spectacular, and sunsets. Now you can add your own, and I've no doubt Adobe will at some point add more in there as well, but this certainly gives you a very, very good starting point. When you go into these, you can see there's a whole range of skies in there, and you can choose from the ones you want. And as you pick these skies out, it puts them in, and you'll see it updates live, takes it a couple of seconds, and there's a variety of skies in there, and each time I click on one, it changes the sky behind there. Now, what it's also doing is a little bit cleverer than that, because it's not only changing the sky in the background, but to a greater or lesser degree, it's also changing the shadows and the lighting on the actual rest of the image as well. So when you add stuff in there, it does try and compensate the rest of the image to a degree and give it, in this case, a slightly orange color cast. It's adjusted that slightly just to allow for that sky in the background. If you want to fine tune that, what you can do is shrink that up by clicking the little arrow there, and you then have some settings in here that allow you to adjust this a little bit more. So if you're not completely happy with the edge on the selection, then you've got things like Shift Edge and Fade Edge there that you can use. And you also have a Refine Sky brush tool up here, a little bit like the Refine Edge tool that we've seen in other places in Photoshop. And that will let you go around and perfect the edges. Now, I've got to say, I've not been using this long. It's only been out today, as I mentioned. But so far on the images I've done, it's been pretty much spot on with everyone. So credit to Adobe where it's due. They seem to have done a very, very good job of making a tool that is pretty accurate straight out the box. But what you can do is go in here, and if you wanted to, you could do sky adjustments. I could go in there, for example, and bring the brightness up, or take the brightness down on the sky if I wanted. In this case, I may bring it up a little bit if I'm thinking it's a bit dark. You can do temperature adjustments in there if I want to change the temperature on there, and as I exaggerate that, you can see those changes. And you can scale the sky as well. So if I bring that up, you'll see the clouds get significantly bigger. If I take it down, eventually you will see the edges on the image there. And I'll just take that back to roughly where it was again and leave it there. Rather than getting monotonous as well, a nice little trick they've added in. There's a little tick box for flip. It literally just flips the sky around. So if you want the clouds in a reverse kind of order there, make it look a little different to the last image, etc., you can do that kind of thing as well. It's a simple one, but it can be quite useful. And then finally, down the bottom here, you have foreground adjustments. And what the foreground adjustments let you do is make a few little changes to the foreground by changing the lighting mode, for example. So if you think the trees are all looking a bit too dark, you might move from multiply across to screen. Now, they only give the 2 options in there, but it's certainly enough to do what you want. Now, they're obviously too light now, but what I can do is I can drag down the lighting adjustment to compensate for that. And you might decide that that's a slightly better look than what was actually quite dark, heavy trees before. Or you may leave it on multiply and adjust the lighting there. You also have a color adjustment option down there that you can play with as well. And then when you're done and you're happy with the way it looks, you can output this to new layers. And if I click OK, what you'll see in there is these are effectively adjustment layers that have been added in the majority of cases. So I've got things like a curves adjustment here, which I can click on, and I can manually change it if I want to and adjust the properties there. Or if I go up here, for example, there's my brightness contrast adjustment, and again, you can see the brightness has been ramped up slightly. So these are all being done using adjustment layers, and they work just like any other adjustment layers and have masks down the side, etc. as well. So hopefully that speeds up that process a little bit for anybody that is wanting to change skies and has to do that on a regular basis. It may well turn what was a fairly laborious, repetitive process into something that's quite quick and quite simple. And just bear in mind, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually bring in your own skies as well and start to use those in there too. So that could be useful in the future.